from the Beacon Capital Management Weather Center.
Rain lingers. I'm WSMV4 First Alert meteorologist Lisa Spencer. The storms will move out through morning, but some showers will continue with our low in the mid-70s. We will look for some clearing in the afternoon on Thursday with the high in the upper 80s. And Friday is going to be a hot one, 91 degrees, plenty of humidity. We'll be in the mid-90s over the weekend, feeling like well over 100.
The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hey friends, it's the Matt Murphy Radio Show, underway for another hour, halfway home on this Wednesday edition. That means we're halfway done with the week. Proud that you decided to join us, whether you're just getting off work into your automobile, perhaps you're still at your place of business, or already at your home. Wherever you might be, thank you for joining us today. We also appreciate our guest on the Matt Murphy Hotline. It is Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti. A huge win by Skrmetti and his team and the state of Tennessee, and by extension, really, the United States of America. A 6-3 decision. Attorney General, congratulations.
Thank you. It's a huge win for Tennessee.
I know you held a press conference earlier today, and I so appreciate you making yourself available to us in Middle Tennessee. I know that your time is it's stretched incredibly thin on this day particularly, but just give us your overview on the decision and how you felt when you heard it. Where were you, and how did it strike you, Attorney General?
Yeah, so I was in the office. You know, we knew this was an opinion day for the Supreme Court. They have a few days. They tell you in advance we're going to issue some opinions. I thought for sure it would not come out today. I was so surprised, and I've been running around doing a bunch of media stuff, just answering questions and talking about this, talking about some other stuff too. So it's been a busy day, but the bottom line of this decision is democracy wins. In America, the people are the ones that make the decisions. The people decided to adopt a constitution that puts guardrails on what the government can do, but within those guardrails, it's not up to judges to say what the law should be. It's not up to medical experts to say what the law should be. It is up to the people's elected representatives to say what the law should be. And in Tennessee, our representatives looked at the evidence. They listened to both sides of the debate, and a bipartisan supermajority said, hey, this is dangerous for kids. There's a lot of risk here. There's not a lot of evidence of any benefits. We're going to prohibit it. And they're in line with a bunch of European countries that have done the exact same thing.
Is this, I feel like this is at least the second Skrmetti AG victory at the Supreme Court level. Am I right?
So we did win in the Title IX rule case, too, which is where the Biden administration was trying to mandate, for instance, biological men being able to walk into a girl's locker room in a school. Mm-hmm. But this one, that was on the emergency docket. It moved pretty quick. There were some other states involved. This one, we were sued for our law. We fought the whole way up. We were the first state to win at any level in one of these cases. And the ACLU and the Biden administration decided to take it all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. And this settles the question. There are a bunch of states with these laws. There are more states considering them. And the Constitution says, and the Supreme Court confirms, that they can prohibit these life-altering procedures on kids who are too young to know what they're agreeing to.
How do you go about, I'm just curious, the process that you go through when something like this comes to you? I mean, you don't bring these things to yourself, right? I mean, they come to you, and you just described that. The Biden Department of Justice decided that, and the ACLU decided that they were going to bring this against Tennessee. How do you work it? Do you kind of start at the beginning and just read the law itself and make sure you fully understand? How do you formulate your arguments? Walk us through that process.
So we knew we were going to get sued over this one. It was a pretty contentious deal, and district court judges in a number of other districts had enjoined similar laws. Mm-hmm. We've got a killer team here. Matt Rice, my Solicitor General, who argued the case, is brilliant. He clerked for Justice Thomas on the Supreme Court. Whitney Hermendorfer, who is in line to be voted on for a federal appellate judgeship, is another brilliant lawyer. She helped put together our response. We had a few Tennessee lawyers outside the office help with this. We had a great team in the office work on the trial level work and help with the appeal. So the key here is just hiring good people and having good lawyers and knowing this is a huge case. This sets a big precedent. This was a very contentious issue. if you get the right people fighting and you set them up for success, you can win the big wins.
I would expect, I don't know if this is the case or not. It's been a very busy day, but have you had an opportunity to absorb the decision? And can you give us kind of a 25-cent tour of what exactly the courts said about the law and about the case that you presented?
Sure. So I haven't read all the opinions yet, but I've made it through the main one and read a bunch of the other stuff, just not all of it. The Chief Justice wrote it for 6 justices, and it basically says this prohibition on medical treatment doesn't discriminate on the basis of sex. It doesn't discriminate on the basis of transgender identity. Medical procedures have been regulated by the states forever. And here you've got a medical procedure where certain treatments for certain conditions are prohibited, and that's just fine. That happens all the time. So it's not an unconstitutional violation to say that a kid with precocious puberty can get puberty blockers, but a kid with gender dysphoria can't. These are 2 different medical conditions. The drugs hit differently. The drugs hit different bodies differently. And boys and girls are different. I mean, medicine is going to sometimes affect them differently, and it's okay for the state to consider that when it's making decisions about the law.
Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti joining us on the Matt Murphy Show this afternoon, discussing the 6-3 victory at the Supreme Court level today. This obviously is a big victory for the state of Tennessee, but it's also a victory for the rights of the states to determine their own future. And I believe that the court made mention of that. If I'm not mistaken, Samuel Alito specifically, and I may have the justice wrong. If I do, I apologize. But I believe it was Alito who said, "Look, the states themselves elect lawmakers to go to the General Assemblies to determine the direction that they want to go in so many different areas, and it is a 10th Amendment issue as much as anything else." Do I have that right, Attorney General?
So I have to confess, I haven't read all of
well, but I mean, it was a basic argument being made by you guys, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's true, though, right? I mean, the states, we are a self-governing people, and where the Constitution doesn't clearly prohibit the states from acting, then the states, who are not limited in the same way the federal government is in terms of scope of jurisdiction, are able to pass laws regulating things like medical practice. So, yeah, I mean, this is a huge 10th Amendment win. It reaffirms the idea that we're going to disagree about stuff. We're going to disagree about important stuff. But through elections and through debate, we're able to resolve those disagreements. And if people are unhappy, they're allowed to talk about it. They're allowed to debate it. They're allowed to try to campaign for candidates they like. But the majority rules. And given the medical evidence in this case, given that you've got these European countries with very different politics that have looked at the evidence and reached the same conclusion as Tennessee, we think it's entirely appropriate to say this is an area where the state should govern and where the Constitution does not prohibit protecting our kids.
Have you had a chance to talk with the governor about it? I imagine he's as excited as we are.
He's pretty excited about it, too. Yeah, he's been so kind and encouraging with this. As have Jack Johnson and William Lambert, the sponsors of the bill in the General Assembly, and both speakers. I mean, we've gotten great support here, and that makes all the difference. I mean, this was a hard case, huge army of lawyers on the other side. So we love the support from all the leaders in Tennessee.
Well, we're lucky to have you, AG. We appreciate your time. We appreciate the fact that you chose to come on with us here in Middle Tennessee and speak to the people of Middle Tennessee, and you've been very gracious. We'll talk again very soon. Congratulations once again.
Thank you.
All right, take care. There's Jonathan Skrmetti. Had a heart out at 16, and I got him out at 16. I feel good about that. So he's got a lot of, obviously, national news media attempting to prey upon his time. And so we do appreciate him spending a little time with us in Middle Tennessee, not forgetting the folks who so appreciate his efforts right here in his home state. 16 after the hour. Your thoughts on any of these things, 615-737-9986. Now, it's my understanding, speaking of Governor Bill Lee, it's my understanding that Governor Lee is out of town, and we invited him to stop by the show and if he wanted to make comment on this. But given that he is out of, I think he's out of, I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I believe he's out of the country right now. But either way, from Governor Bill Lee, here is his statement on the matter. I'm grateful because I reached out to his team, Elizabeth and Casey and the rest of the team over there in his office, and said, look, if the governor wants to speak to Middle Tennessee and the entire state about this very important ruling, we have time for him. And while he was unable to do that, they did send me this statement from Governor Bill Lee. I'm grateful to Attorney General Skrmetti for securing a historic victory for Tennessee at the U.S. Supreme Court. Protecting children is a fundamental responsibility that we take seriously, and I was proud to sign this bipartisan legislation that lawfully safeguards young people from irreversible, life-altering medical decisions. Voters, through their elected representatives, should have the power to decide what they believe on serious issues like this one. That from Governor Bill Lee responding to the decision today. Big deal, big decision, and obviously it gives the opportunity, or at least opens the door. And frankly, this one is a little bit different than Dobbs in that in the Dobbs decision, which brought the idea of abortion back to the states and back to the people that are represented by their state legislators. The question was, A, whether it was a constitutional issue in Dobbs v. Jackson, and Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided in that regard. And I always believed that from a federalist standpoint, that this should be taken back to the states, where the individual states can make determinations about so many of these various issues. And the issues involve, when does life begin? Because at the heart of the matter is when life begins, rights begin. Y'all understand that? When we consider you to be a life, a human being, at that point you have the rights of other human beings, whether you're in the womb or not. Some states determine that, sadly, I would say, that life doesn't begin until the third trimester or so late into that pregnancy, even to the point that there are states that allow for abortion until birth. Some states, like ours in the state of Tennessee, some say, no, life begins, at conception. And we're going to make very little exceptions to that basic premise that once life begins growing in your body, that life is precious. Even though you may not be able to hear a heartbeat, even though that life might not be able to exist outside of the womb or outside of the presence of the mother, we're still going to consider that to be a human being, and we're going to afford all of the same rights. But I understand why states can view this differently, and why the people of those states have every opportunity, or should have every opportunity, to offer their thoughts through their votes on when they would determine that life begins. All of that to say, and I'm not making a value judgment on it. I'm just saying I can understand it, why you would make the distinction between birth, conception, 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, etc. Which is why you would have different decisions at the state level. In this case, it's a little different because there's no question that you're dealing with human beings. There's no question that you're dealing with the rights of these young people, these minors who have not reached the age of majority. And because that's not the question before the states, then the question becomes, is this a form of child abuse? Is this abusing a child irreversibly in a life-altering way that cannot be undone? And if that's the case, then you're not establishing when those rights begin and when those rights end. Those rights exist. If you establish that it is, in fact, abusive in its nature, then I think you can make the case that in this circumstance, you should have a nationwide ban on these things, because the consideration is not whether or not that individual is, in fact, a human being. The consideration is whether or not it's abuse. If you determine that it's abuse, then I think you can make a solid case that this ought to be federalized in Washington, D.C. 22 after the hour. Your call's coming up on this and more subjects, plus the latest on Iran and Israel. I've been promising you that. And Nincompoops in the News makes its triumphant return. We didn't do it yesterday, and I didn't mind that we didn't do it yesterday because we were out on location at Kings Bowl. I mind when I forget to tell you, and I apologize sincerely for that because I failed to mention that there would be no Nincompoops yesterday, and I got a tongue lashing from people regarding that.
Rightfully so.
I mean, yeah, sure. I bet you had a big one all keyed up and ready to go, all teed up.
But that's what today is for.
What, to revisit yesterday's?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And we'll do so in about 20 minutes or so on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Subscribe to All the Best Words with Matt Murphy and Cameron Smith.
With 3 new episodes a week, it's all you need to get yourself through that vigorous 15-minute workout.
Available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Super Talk TV.